This was the moment the gaming world lost an all-time legend. On December 21st, 2025, Vince Zampella, the 55-year-old co-founder of Respawn Entertainment and Infinity Ward, and one of the most influential figures in modern video games, died in a violent single-car accident on Angeles Crest Highway, a notoriously windy mountain road north of Los Angeles. Driving a 2026 Ferrari 296 GTS, the car veered off the scenic roadway just after exiting a tunnel, slammed into a concrete barrier, and erupted into flames, trapping Zampella in the burning wreckage as he was pronounced dead at the scene. A passenger was also ejected from the vehicle and later died at the hospital, their identity not yet released. The California Highway Patrol said the vehicle left the roadway for unknown reasons, and authorities have not yet disclosed whether speed, mechanical failure, or other factors played a role. Zampella's death comes just days before Christmas, shocking the gaming world and leaving his 3 children and ex-wife grieving, while studios across the industry are mourning the loss of a creative force whose work shaped franchises like Call of Duty, Titanfall, Apex Legends, and Battlefield. This was the moment when a routine day on the slope suddenly spiraled into chaos, when a chairlift at Georgia's Gadori Ski Resort malfunctioned and began racing backward down the mountain. The lift reversed at high speed, smashing chairs together at the bottom terminal and violently throwing riders to the ground, while others were forced to jump to avoid being crushed by swinging metal seats. Screams erupted as people piled at the base of the lift, with some narrowly missing being struck by flying chairs and bodies. At least 8 people were seriously injured, including tourists from several countries, with reported injuries ranging from broken limbs to head and spinal trauma. Investigators later concluded the rollback was triggered by an electrical failure, which was only worsened by operator error after emergency procedures were not properly followed. In the aftermath, the lift operator was suspended and resort managers were forced to resign. Criminal and civil investigations later followed, examining how a system designed to keep riders safe turned into a death trap within seconds. This is the facial reconstruction created from a severed human head found in an Illinois park in 1993, the only clue investigators had for nearly 3 decades. The victim remained unidentified until 2022, when DNA genealogy revealed she was Susan Lund, who disappeared on Christmas Eve in 1992 after walking to a nearby store. Despite finally learning her name almost 30 years later, the rest of her body was never recovered, no suspect was ever charged, and her murder remains unsolved. This is a decorative tower filled with thousands of shaved human jawbone fragments, removed from patients during cosmetic jaw reduction surgeries in South Korea. The display came from a Seoul plastic surgery clinic, where the surgeons stacked discarded pieces of patients' faces into stacked columns to represent how many operations he had performed. The towers sparked public backlash and were later removed after authorities fined the clinic for violating medical waste laws requiring human remains to be incinerated. The case became a disturbing symbol of how normalized extreme facial alteration has become in South Korea, to the point that many patients have even reported being questioned at border control because their faces no longer match their passport photos. DJ Carey, a former Irish hurling legend, was jailed after admitting he spent years faking a cancer diagnosis to scam friends and contacts out of nearly £350,000. Prosecutors revealed he sent staged photos showing what appeared to be medical tubing in his nose, later exposed as an iPhone charging cable taped to his face. He claimed the money was urgently needed for treatment, exploiting sympathy and trust while continuing the deception. The scheme collapsed when victims grew suspicious, and authorities confirmed he never even had cancer at all. Carey pleaded guilty to multiple fraud charges and was sentenced to more than 5 years in prison. A man once spent nearly 5 months locked inside Rikers Island without realizing he could have walked free at any point for just $2. Court records later showed a judge had ordered his release only a week after he was arrested for a nonviolent offense, setting an absurdly low bail, but his lawyer never told him. With no one informing him of his status, he remained trapped inside one of the most notoriously violent jail complexes in the United States, a place long plagued by assaults, gang activity, neglect, and inmate murders. By the time the mistake had been discovered, months of his life had already been lost to one of the most dangerous detention systems in the country. This was the moment a routine shoplifting stop inside a Walmart in Canton, Ohio nearly turned deadly. In December of 2025, body cam footage shows 2 suspects, Shane Newman and Katarina Jeffrey, being held in a small back office for questioning when the situation abruptly escalated. As Canton police officers apparently let their guard down, Newman reached into his clothing, pulled out a handgun, and attempted to fire it at an officer from close range. Luckily, the weapon malfunctioned and failed to discharge, a failure investigators say likely prevented a fatal shooting inside the store. The officer immediately moved to restrain Newman as additional officers rushed in to secure the room. Both suspects were taken into custody without anyone being physically injured. Police later confirmed Newman was legally prohibited from possessing a firearm and was also found to be in possession of hard drugs at the time of the arrest. He was charged with attempted murder, felonious assault on a police officer, robbery, drug possession, and having a weapon while under disability. His girlfriend was simply charged with complicity to commit robbery. On December 11, 2002, 22-year-old Alan Menzies murdered his best friend, 21-year-old Thomas McKendrick, inside his home in West Lothian, Scotland. Menzies had become obsessed with the film Queen of the Damned, watching it more than 100 times, and later told police he believed the character Queen Akasha was visiting him and instructing him to kill for immortality. When McKendrick came over that morning, Menzies attacked him with knives and a hammer, claiming the violence was triggered after McKendrick insulted Akasha. After killing him, Menzies drank McKendrick's blood and ate part of his head, stating this was the necessary process to become a vampire. He then placed the body of his best friend in a wheelbarrow and buried it in a shallow grave, where it remained undiscovered for the next 6 weeks. In court, prosecutors revealed Menzies had a long history of serious violence starting at age 14, including multiple stabbings. He literally told the court, "If you don't murder somebody, you can't become a vampire." Menzies received a life sentence with at least 18 years before parole eligibility, but in 2004, less than 2 years after the murder, he was found dead in his prison cell. In 2012, Harold Henthorne claimed that his wife Toni had died in a hiking accident after falling 140 feet off a cliff in Rocky Mountain National Park. On the day of their 12th wedding anniversary, Harold insisted on a strenuous hike up Deer Mountain despite Toni's bad knee and limited hiking experience. After her fall, he gave investigators multiple conflicting accounts, repeatedly changing what he said he was doing at the moment she fell over the edge. Investigators later found a map in his car with the exact location of her death marked with an X, and uncovered that his spouse before Toni had also died years earlier under mysterious circumstances. Toni's death closely resembled the 1995 death of Lynn Henthorne, who was crushed beneath a Jeep on a remote Colorado road when it supposedly slipped off a jack. Harold claimed both deaths were merely accidents, but prosecutors argued the similarities were far too extreme to be considered coincidence. In 2015, he was convicted of murdering Toni Henthorne and sentenced to life in prison. Jeremy Renner's 15,000-pound snowplow crushed his body with such force that he later recalled hearing the crunching of his own bones. The actor sustained 38 broken bones, a collapsed lung, severe cranial trauma, and required extensive reconstruction with metal plates to his chest, legs, and face. Among the most horrifying details he later revealed was that the impact had dislodged his left eyeball so severely that he could see it sticking out of his head with his right eye. A poor spider that was posthumously named Lawrence got stuck in this glass and couldn't climb up the smooth surface, so it apparently tried to web its way to the top until its silk ran out and it eventually perished. In 2003, 28-year-old British marine biologist Kirsty Brown was snorkeling off the coast of Antarctica when a massive leopard seal lunged from below, clamping onto her head. The powerful predator dragged her deep underwater, then repeatedly surged up and down through the water column in a torturous manner, shaking her violently before releasing her lifeless body. It was the first recorded fatal leopard seal attack on a human. Photographer Sam Davis captured the incredible moment a snake eel burst out from a heron's stomach while the bird was still flying, having chewed its way through the heron's throat using its pointed tail. Both animals were likely fatally injured. In February of 2021, a 45-year-old man named Thangula Satish died in India after his rooster, armed with a 3-inch blade for an illegal cockfight, slashed his groin as it tried to escape, severing a major artery. The rooster was briefly detained at a police station for potential evidence before being transferred to a farm. Orlando Brown, who played Eddie Thomas on That's So Raven, has endured a bizarre and highly public downfall marked by addiction, homelessness, mental health struggles, and repeated run-ins with the law. Once a Disney Channel fan favorite, he's since been arrested for drug possession, faced assault charges, and made an infamous appearance on Dr. Phil, wearing eerie snake-eye contact lenses while making erratic statements. As his troubles have played out in a chaotic mix of arrests, unsettling public behavior, and strange interviews, friends and former colleagues have publicly expressed fear for his life. In 2004, Dutch filmmaker Theo van Gogh, the great-grandson of Vincent van Gogh's brother, was murdered in Amsterdam for his film Submission, which criticized the treatment of women in Islam. His killer, a radical Islamist, shot him, stabbed him, and nearly decapitated him, leaving a knife in his chest with a note threatening the film's co-creator. Rebecca Sherrick has hyperthymesia, an extremely rare condition that lets her recall every single day of her life in vivid detail, even memories from infancy. While it may sound extraordinary, she describes it as a curse that she can't turn off. Every embarrassment, heartbreak, and trauma plays back in her mind as clearly as the day it happened, trapping her in moments that most people get to forget. Babe Ruth, baseball's greatest legend, lived a life steeped in excess and tragedy. Orphaned at just 7 when his parents abandoned him to a reform school, his only real father figure was a strict monk who taught him baseball. Years later, his real father died during a bloody street fight, cracking his skull on a Baltimore curb. As Ruth rose to fame, his bottomless appetite for hot dogs, whiskey, and women wrecked his health, earning him syphilis rumors in a near-death collapse in 1925 that newspapers dubbed the bellyache heard around the world, after he allegedly gorged on a dozen hot dogs and beers in one sitting before collapsing. In his final years, Babe's booming voice was silenced by a rare and brutal throat cancer, leaving him unable to eat or speak before it finally killed him at just 53 years old. When his body was laid out in Yankee Stadium, more than 77,000 fans piled past his corpse in the house that Ruth built, saying goodbye to a baseball legend who was ultimately undone by his own appetites.